Hey, everybody. It's Regina. I am back. I'm at the home studio. I'm finally back home from a full day out taking care of business, real estate transactions, business deals, and so forth. And as some of you may know, if you were on my channel earlier today, I paused for a moment in between clients to do a quick little chit chat video about the eviction process. So I started the conversation. It was really kind of good. It was a short video, maybe about 30 minutes or so, but it was very informative. And I had to cut it short because my client did come in. And so I decided when I got back to home, I would continue and proceed by giving you a part two. Yay! So here I am for the part two. The title of this is The Eviction Process Part Two. I thought it was very needing for me to come live and talk to some people because we do work with tenants on a daily basis. And some of the tenants are not understanding that the fullness of the eviction process. And there's a lot to take in when it comes to this eviction process. But I wanted to come live and talk to you all very short. I'm hoping this video is going to be short, not very long, because I still got a ton of stuff to do. But I wanted to keep my promise to go live for part two. But here's the thing. I want to discuss a few of the conversations that I have had with some tenants when it comes to the eviction process. Sometimes the tenants, like I said in the first video, excuse me, the best thing that you can do, excuse me, I don't know, something outside has my sinuses acting weird. But the best thing you can do when it comes to possibly facing eviction, and you maybe, have been told that you're about to go into eviction, or your landlord is saying they're going to start the eviction process, or the eviction process has already started. Like I informed you all before, the best thing to do if you're not able to pay your rent is to have a conversation with your landlord. That's the first thing. The moment you know that the first of the month is coming and you're not able to pay your rent, you don't want to wait until the 5th, 6th, 10th, 15th, when your landlord is now calling you to say, hey, where's the rent? We didn't get the rent. You don't want to wait until that time. You really want to stay in good rapport and a good relationship with your landlord by contacting your landlord and letting them know what is going on, okay? So that they understand, and that's where your trust with your landlord will come into place, where you're going to be letting them know, listen, this is what's going on. And again, like I said in that first video, you might be able to have a working relationship as far as the deal transaction where your landlord and you can work on something, maybe come to a payment plan or something, or maybe the landlord can say, well, I'll put that one to the end of the lease or something like that. Whatever it may be that you and your landlord work out. But that's not going to happen unless you have that conversation with your landlord. You're going to have to talk to your landlord. Now, for some of you that might say, well, my landlord doesn't manage a property. There's a management company that manages the property. How can I get in contact with the owner? Can I talk to the owner? Because I don't want to talk to the property manager. I want to speak to the owner. Well, understand this, unless that property manager has gotten authorization from the owner to give you their information, they normally won't do that, because the owner of the property has hired that management company to transact business for them on their behalf. And so a lot of times what happens is most tenants will never be in contact with the owner if there is a property manager. And that's done for several reasons. And one of it is usually the landlords, the owners of the property, really don't want to have that relationship or business relationship with the tenant. So they don't want the headache of the whole thing. So they hire a property manager to handle all of that for them. It relieves them from the stress of the whole situation, okay? So if you're saying, I want to talk to the owner, I don't care, I want to talk to the owner, possibility you will not be able to talk to that owner, okay? So you're going to have to work with that property manager. Some of you might say, well, the property managers mean they don't work with me, they don't cooperate. Unfortunately, if they are the property manager on that property, you're going to have to communicate through them, all right? Now, let's talk about if you've been served notice and what's the process. I've been watching a lot of videos, and those of you who are watching this today, I put in the link 2 or 3, I think it's 3 videos of YouTubers who I found that are doing what's called process server work. They are the ones that go out, meet at the property, and tell the tenants, inform the tenants it is time for you to vacate the property. Okay? They're the ones that do that. Instagram, my sinuses. So they're the ones that are going to be informing you. They get that knock on the door. Hey, I'm here. You have to move your stuff out. We got a crew here. Everything's got to go. That's what the process servers do when it's time for that writ, what's called the writ, to be served. If you're in eviction, if you're in eviction and not foreclosure, but if you're in eviction and you get that knock on the door and that gentleman or female woman, female or woman is saying it's time for you to move and get your stuff out, that's probably the time when it's past negotiation time. It's past the negotiation time at that point. You are now in a situation where you have no other recourses or choices but to vacate the property. And I want to talk about maybe that process, okay? Well, let's go over just a few things here. And like I said, I got a few notes here, so let's go over that real quick. And I'm hoping I don't keep you too long because I want to get back in here and get some other stuff done. All right. So the first thing I want to talk to you about, if you're someone who is renting a property, the first thing I want you to be aware of is this. This is not your home. It's not your house. Now, it's where you reside and you say, well, this is my house. This is where I live. This is it's where you're renting, but the property belongs to the property owner. That's your landlord. You are not the owner of the property. You are the tenant. Okay, that's the first thing. A lot of times these tenants say, well, this is my house. This is mine. No, it's not. It is not yours. It belongs to that owner. Okay. Next thing, notices. Usually well, not usually, but the landlords, when it's time for you to file eviction, if you have not paid your rent and the landlord decides to go ahead and proceed with eviction, that landlord will do this, or the property manager will send you a notice to let you know, one, we have not received your rent. You can get those notices via email, text messages, or posted right on your front door. Whichever way you get them, or it could be mailed to you. Whichever way you get them, the landlord or property manager will inform you that we have not received your rent and eviction proceedings will begin. They normally, here what we do, we sometimes give them maybe a 3-day grace period. We'll say if you pay your rent within 3 days of this first notice, we won't go ahead and proceed with the court filing. So most of you may get a letter or a notice or a text message or an email or something from your landlord or property manager saying, hey, we haven't received your rent and maybe we're going to give you some days to pay that. Now, I'm saying maybe because every landlord in every state and county are different. There are different regulations. So if you want to find out what the regulations are for the area that you're in, you want to maybe do a Google search and ask, or either you can go down to the local courthouse and ask them if they can give you information. But a lot of times the court, clerks don't give you anything because they say we're not lawyers. And so they don't want to give it to you. So the best thing to probably do is to just do a Google search on that. But in the process of like some landlords that do give the notices, it will say on the letter or the notice that you get that, hey, I need you to pay the rent by this time, this day, or whatever. That's the time when you want to pick up the phone and call your landlord if you have not called them before. That is not the time to ignore that. It's not the time. Don't ignore it. Pay attention and answer it. Okay. I know a lot of you may say, well, this is an embarrassing time. I'm embarrassed. I really don't want to have to deal with this. You're going to have to deal with it. This is not the time to just pull the covers over your head and say, forget it, I'm not talking to nobody. You need to talk to the property manager or the landlord, okay? Now, once you get that notice, and let's say, for instance, it does have a 3-day period on there. If you have not paid the rent by that notice date that's on there, then what the next step will be is that landlord will proceed with filing at the court. And they'll go ahead and file what's called a dispossession. They'll go ahead, a dispossessory. They'll file a dispossessory, which is the same thing as an eviction. And that, once it's filed at the court, now it's going to go to the judge's calendar, and the judge will then set a court date. okay, for this. So the lawyers would normally get involved in this whole situation, usually with the first notice or the second notice. Okay. Now, if you want to find out more about that, go to the first video that I did on part one. It probably is just going to say the eviction process or so forth, but just go to my first video on that because I got a lot I need to get through. So let's say you've got the first notice, you've gotten the notice, the eviction has been filed at the court. You say, what happens now? Now, in the state that we're in, the sheriff's office, once the lawyers have filed the eviction at the court, the sheriff's office will normally then get that notice and they will go to the property and put a notice on your door. Or either they'll knock on the door and tell you, here, you've been served with eviction papers. On that paperwork, it will have instructions on what you need to do next. Okay, so don't ignore the paperwork. Pay attention to the paperwork. Now, let's say that, the next process is, you've gone to court, you don't have the money. What do? Here's the thing. Once you get to court, you're going to have to then speak with that lawyer, and that lawyer will then have to determine what's the next step. Okay, so you're going to have to speak to them. Now, I want to talk to you real briefly on this part. Once an eviction is filed at court under your name, it becomes a hit on your record. Okay, so let's say, for instance, if you decide to try and apply for another property or want to inquire about another property, some of you may have heard this already. People try and apply for other properties and they say, well, you have an eviction on here. It's going to be on your record. Okay, so it's not like it's just going to be hidden. It's going to be public record as far as your court documents, because once it's been filed at the court, it's a filing. So it's there. And it's going to be probably harder for people to get another rental because landlords, like I said in the first video, landlords are doing thorough background checks now because they have taken hits and losses on maybe other tenants who have not paid their rent and left the landlord stuck with losses. All right. So let's go over some of the reasons that some of the tenants have told me as to why they can't pay their rent. Let's go over that. And some of these things that I'm going to talk about, you may think it's like, really, Regina, this is what they say. Really, this is what some of these people have actually said to me. I don't make any light of it. I'm not making any fun of it. I'm just telling you, I'm going to answer some of these things that people have actually discussed that I've actually heard doing deals with tenants who, unfortunately, we had to evict. And let me tell you, landlords are not in the business of investing just so that they can evict people. Because let me tell you, they don't make money off an eviction. It actually is a loss. Okay. It's a loss to that investor because they got to pay lawyer fees, court fees, move out crew fees. It's an expensive cost to a landlord to do an eviction. So this is not something that they, get into the business of investing to do. So it's not their goal to just evict people. Their goal is to make money. But if you're not paying your rent, they're not making any money. Okay. So here's some of the things that I've heard people say. The first thing they say is, how long do I have to move out? Now, if you have a writ that's already been served and that sheriff is knocking on your door, your time is up. You have to leave that same day that sheriff is there. Now, some people may say, well, do the courts tell me how long I have? And it depends on your jurisdiction. It depends on what the guidelines are in the county or city where you are. So you're going to have to look that up or contact somebody to ask that question because it depends. But my take on today, this video, is basically telling you about the process. Once it's gone to court, you've already had your court date. The judge says you're going to have to move out. You're still in the property. Sometimes in some states, when you go to court, the judge may say, okay, you got 7 days to move out. If you have not moved out in those 7 days, that's when you're going to get that knock on that door from that process server or that sheriff and the landlord saying, hey, we're here to remove your things from the property. When that happens, your time is up. You have no more time to find or to stay there. You have no more time. It is time for you to move. And get this, the sheriff and the moving crew, they're not going to wait for you to find a U-Haul truck. They're not going to wait to, to you find a place to put your stuff. They're not going to wait for the babysitter to come back with the kids. They're not going to do any of that. They're going to go in there. They're going to remove the items. They're going to put them on the front lawn, and they're going to change the locks on the house. They are. Let's talk a little bit more about this. All right. So the move out time, how much time do you have? Once that sheriff knocks on the door and says it's time for you to move out, that's it. You have to move out that day. All right. Some of the things that people have said, they've told some of the sheriffs that I've heard, they say, hey, I'm trying to get back on my feet. I've had a rough time. I'm trying to get back. Can you give me some more time? No. Once that sheriff knocks on your door, that's it. You can talk to that landlord and see what that landlord wants to do, but that sheriff job and that move out crew job, that RIT crew job, their job is to remove your items from that property and get those locks changed so that that landlord can get back possession of his house. That's what their job is. Okay. Some of the other things I heard people say, medical reasons. Well, I was sick, or a family member was sick, or someone unfortunately passed away. Those are very heartfelt conversations that we've had. But unfortunately, once the sheriff knocks on the door, you have to vacate that property. The time to talk about the medical issues and the illnesses and stuff like that is before the sheriff comes to your home. You need to talk to your landlord. Now, I'm not saying that your landlord will be able to not proceed with the eviction, but it depends on the landlord and what their decision is going to be. So you need to have those conversations with your landlord. Okay. So medical reasons, I've heard people say, well, I've got somebody in the house, they're sick. There was a situation where there was somebody and they said, well, I've got COVID. And unfortunately, they had to remove them from that property. It was terrible, but they had to remove them from the property. They had to move them out. I have not seen any reason or excuse that has come up that the sheriff or the evictions that I've seen that they actually have said, well, we're going to let you stay. I've heard probably everything. All right. So medical reasons, although they're unfortunate that they happen, and I'm sure the landlord sympathizes with you, unfortunately, you're going to have to move out. Now, mind you, let me just say this in a pause real quick. Usually when you have an eviction that come up, usually it's because you have not paid your rent for like 30 days or 60 days and sometimes longer. So it's not just like your rent was due on the 1st, and they filed it on the 5th, and now the 10th you're at court. It's not usually that fast. Usually there's some time in between, and usually it can be, as fast as maybe 30 days or as slow as sometimes a few months after that or months after that. There's been some evictions that have waited for the writ, 6 months or more, or even longer than that. But I'm saying that to say this, the process is not going to be, okay, your rent was due on the 1st and now you got to move by the 15th. That's usually not that quick. So usually with these issues that people are having, some time has lapsed during that process. Some people have also said job loss. They say, hey, I lost my job. What happens? I'm trying to get on my feet. When the sheriff is there, that is not the time to tell the sheriff you lost your job. You need to have that conversation with your landlord. And again, if you have lost your job and you're not able to pay your rent, then maybe it's time for you to start seeking another place to reside. Maybe you need to call those family members and say, hey, I lost my job. I need another place. Or maybe it's time for you to start looking for something less expensive. Maybe you can downsize. Maybe you can get a part-time job or something. But to inform the sheriff, hey, I lost my job, is not going to get that sheriff to stop you from moving things out of that house. Okay. Some of you, like I said in the first video, some of you have said, well, there's repairs that need to be done on the property. The landlord didn't do the repairs. A conversation, again, you need to have before with that landlord. That sheriff is there to move your things out. He can look at all the repairs that's there, and he's still going to say, you have to move your things out of the property. If you are having problems with repairs in your property, have that conversation with your landlord. See if you can work something out with the landlord regarding what those repairs are. Okay. Some of the people have told me their roommate moved out. Again, if you sign a lease and you sign that lease with a roommate, you are all responsible for that rent, unless you have an agreement with the landlord of a separate payment situation. But most of the time, the landlords are going to rent one property with one lease with several names. That means if one person doesn't pay, then all the other people that are on that lease are responsible for that payment. So that sheriff is not going to come there and say, I'm only here to remove the one roommate. They're going to remove everybody from that property. So you need to make sure that there's a payment arrangement in place if one of the roommates is not able to pay, or you all might need to work out having that one roommate to vacate so you can get another roommate in there to take the place of them if they're not financially able to proceed with their rent portion. Okay. The other thing I have on here is new owner or landlord sold the property. This happens a lot where there's an eviction process going on and the owner is selling the property. That eviction does not change. Even though there's a sale of a property, that eviction will still proceed. Okay, it does not change. And again, check your jurisdiction because it may be different in other jurisdictions, but in the jurisdiction where I am, that eviction is still going to proceed. There have been some people that said they apply for rental assistance. You know, why don't the landlord wait for the rental assistance program to pay them their money? Well, the rental assistance programs take some time. It's a process, and sometimes it takes a long time. The landlord is not required to wait for the rental assistance to go through. It would be good if the rental assistance program process would be a lot quicker, but it's not. And so, unfortunately, the landlord still can proceed with the eviction process. The landlord is not required to wait for the process. So if you have applied for rental assistance, you want to keep in contact with the rental assistance program or a contact person there and have them also keep your landlord updated so that the landlord knows what's going on, and maybe they can be a little lenient to wait for the process. But just to tell the sheriff, hey, I did a rental assistance program, the sheriff is not going to stop the process. He's going to keep you there. There's also been this one that came up where people said, I have small children in this house. You can't move me out. I've got small children. Where will they go? Unfortunately, everyone and everything in that property will have to be moved out, including, and it's sad to say, the children. Now, this is where my heart really is sad when I go to properties and there are children in the home, especially small children. They really don't know the process, don't really know what's going on, or either some of the older children, they kind of do know what's going on. And it's really an embarrassment for them because sometimes their friends, you know, or the neighbors out there and they're watching, and it's an embarrassment to them. But unfortunately, it's part of the process. And the sheriff is not going to stop the process because you have small children in the home. Again, check your jurisdiction for guidelines on that. Okay. There's been this one that came up that says, I don't have anywhere to go. It's sad, but it happens. And I don't know how prepared people can be, but I do believe that the system, the court system, do try and do their best to work with people. As far as, like I said, here where I am, the judge will say, okay, you got 7 days to move out. It's 7 days. Start the process. Do something. At least get a U-Haul truck, ready to have your stuff moved. Get a storage unit to put your stuff in. I know people say, well, I don't have the money to do that. I didn't have money to pay my rent. I don't have money to do that. Here's the thing. I've gone to some properties where people say, they didn't have money to pay their rent, and we're doing an eviction, and they still got lights and utilities on at the house. They still have cable and internet. They still have a refrigerator full of groceries. They still have all the finest gadgets in the house, the big screen TVs, the designer clothes. They've got all this stuff, the cars in the drive. They got all this stuff, but they don't have what they need, and that's the rent or the storage unit. And unfortunately, you're going to have to move out. You're still going to have to move out. We don't know where you're going to go, but the process is still going to take place. There's been some people that says, I have the money now. Can I pay the rent? They have actually told the sheriff, well, I have the money. Just let me pay it. It's not the time. If you had the money the day the sheriff came, why not contact the landlord before the sheriff came? Okay. The sheriff is not going to take your money because you showing him that you have money to pay. That's something again that you need to go into communicate, or you're going to have to communicate with your landlord. And people, if you have the money to pay the rent, stop sitting on it. Pay the rent. And some people say, well, the landlord wouldn't take it. If the landlord did not take it, it's probably various reasons why. The landlord is not required or demanded to take the rent if it's past due and he's already started the eviction process. And again, check your jurisdiction for the regulations on this. But I know where I am. We're not required to take the rent after you've already after the court has already filed for the writ. The writ's already been filed. The time to try and work all that out is when you get the first notice. Okay. All right. There's some other people that says, can I get my deposit back? I hear this a lot and I'm really baffled by it. People have said, can I get my deposit back? Unfortunately, no. You have to understand and read your lease closely. And usually that lease or will say that the deposit will go towards any past due rent. So more than likely, no, you will not get the deposit back. I have also had people say, well, if I don't get my deposit back, I'm not giving you the keys. We don't need the keys. Once the sheriff is there, the locks will be changed. Okay. All right. People have also said, can the landlord hold my items? Like some people say, well, can you just hold my items for me until I find, somewhere to put it? More than likely, that landlord will not take on the responsibility to hold your items. They don't want that liability, so they will not agree to hold your items. You are responsible for your items once they are moved out of the property. Some people say, how long can I keep the items? Because here's the setup process. Now, the setup process is once the landlord and the sheriff inform the tenant, hey, we're here to move your things out. Tenant open the door. The sheriff goes in. Tenants come out, have to wait outside. Here in the jurisdiction where we are, the tenants cannot be in the property when their things or belongings are being removed. Okay, that's for the safety of not only the tenants, but also the movers, the crew that's moving, and also for the sheriff that's there. So we move the tenants out. They can sit outside and wait outside, but they cannot be inside when the items are being moved. So the items are going to be removed from the property, and they're going to be placed usually on the front lawn or the front of the building. If you're an apartment complex, they're usually set out right there in the front. They would literally disassemble furniture, take down beds, take the stuff out of the refrigerator, everything out the cabinet, put them in plastic bags, and or maybe if they have plastic bags, if they don't have plastic bags, they're just going to set it out on, let's say, for instance, if it's a house, on that front lawn. Everything is going to go on that front lawn. Everything. Okay. Some people have said, well, they set things out there and they left to go get a truck and the items were stolen. Now, here's the thing. Once the sheriff makes sure that the home is clear and everything has been removed and the door locks have been changed, they will then leave along with the crew and the landlord, if the landlord is there to witness the move out. They will leave. So your items will be on that front lawn. You are responsible for your items. The RIT crew and the sheriff will not wait for you to get back with your truck or wait until you get off home from work. They will not. If you are not present when those door locks are changed and the doors are closed and the sheriff and the RIT crew gets in their car to leave, if you're not present, your items will be left on the premises for you to take care of. And whatever happens after that happens. I have seen this and it's been sad to say, but there have been some instances where people have actually come and removed items, didn't belong to them, and stolen things from the property. It happens. Do I agree with it? I don't think it's right. I don't think anybody should touch anybody's things that don't belong to them. That's wrong. Those are not your things. but it happens. But I said that to say this: the landlord, the sheriff, the RIT crew, they are not responsible for your belongings. They are yours, and you have to make sure that you get your things secure after that. So the set out crew is not responsible for those items. All right. Valuables. People say I had valuables, in there. Everything is set out on the lawn. So if you had any valuables and you're there at the property, you need to make sure that you put up your valuables or get your valuables and put them on your person, or either put them in your vehicle or secure your valuables, because they're not responsible. You won't be able to, go after, or if you wanted to try and sue the landlord, said people stole my stuff because the landlords put my stuff out there. I don't think that case will be won. You could try it if you want, but the process is you didn't pay your rent, and so the sheriff is going to remove your things and place them on the lawn. The other question was, I was not there when they removed my items. When the sheriff comes to remove your items from the property, they're not going to wait for someone to get home to let them in. They're going to knock on the door. They're going to identify themselves, and that's in this jurisdiction where I am, and they're going to proceed with entering the property. And if no one is there, that is not going to stop them from removing your items from the home and changing the locks on the property. All your belongings will be left out on the front lawn. Everything. And no one is going to be there guarding your property. All right. The other thing is, I'll get the money. I just need more time. A conversation you're going to have with your landlord. You're going to have that conversation with your landlord. That is not a conversation for the sheriff. And again, this is why I said in the first video and in this video, it is very important for you to have conversations with your landlord, because your landlord is the key to avoiding the eviction process. All right. Other people have said, I'm on my own and I don't have no one to help me. Unfortunately, same process is going to continue. Your things will be put out. It's a sad situation, especially people who don't have anybody they can rely on or anybody that can help them. But the process with the sheriff and the moving of the items is still going to be the same. All right, I'll talk about fees. You might get notices also. You might say, well, the court document says I owe this, but my ledger is now saying I owe this. What's the extra fees? I don't agree with the fees. Can we go back to court to dispute the fees? All of that needs to be discussed once you're in court. Any discussions after that court date, again, you can possibly speak with your landlord, but once that sheriff knocks on your door, that sheriff is not going to sit there and itemize things on your ledger and determine what's what. That's not what his job is. His job is to remove the items from the property and secure the property and get the keys, the new keys, back to the landlord. I get this question also. It says, what if I refuse to leave? This one is something else. There have been people that said, I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. Nobody's going to remove me from this property and so forth. Unfortunately, like I said, everything and everybody will have to move out of that property. Everybody. So if someone is saying, I'm not moving, I'm refusing to leave, then you're going to be considered trespassing. And that is a problem, because now you may be facing jail time and being arrested. So to say, I'm just not leaving, you're not going to make me move. Yes, they will. They will physically make you move. And more than likely, it's probably going to be you going out in handcuffs. So listen, it's just not worth it. Now you'll be taken to jail and your stuff is going to be on the front lawn, nobody guarding it. All right. The other thing I've heard is, it says, what if I re-enter the property after the writ? Some people have said, well, once the sheriff leave, I'm just going to go in and break in the property and change the locks back, and I'm going to put my stuff back in the property. It has happened, but guess what, people? You're trespassing. And now you're going to be subject to arrest. And yes, they will come and arrest you. It's just not worth it, people. It's not worth it. Now you've got a arrest record on your record. It's not worth it. Some people have also said this: can we barter with the landlord? Now, some of you may say, what is barter? Well, what happens is some tenants have said, well, listen, I don't have all the money, but can I give you this sofa for $10 off my rent? Can I give you this TV, this flat screen TV for $200 off my rent? Can I give you this, for this money off my rent? Can we barter? No. The landlord does not want your personal belongings. The landlord wants his property. All right. And the last thing I have on here is, what if my belongings are stolen off the lawn? Can I sue the landlord? Well, as we discussed that earlier, unfortunately, you are responsible for your items. Now, if you want to try and make a claim against your landlord, that's your court money. From here and where I am, you have to pay to file things at the court. So that's up to you what you want to do. But more than likely, you're not going to win that case. You need to make sure that you get your items secure. All right. The best thing to do, if you feel like you are in a position where you're not able to pay your rent, have that communication again with your landlord. I cannot stress that enough. And again, when you're having a conversation with your landlord, people, please be honest, because landlords have a way of finding out information which you won't believe that they're able to find out. But they find out. There were people that have told me that they lost their job, and I did a verification check and found out that they had never lost their job. They were still working, still had their information. Be honest with your landlord. Be honest. And I don't understand why, if you still have the job, you didn't want to pay the rent. I just don't get it, people. Honesty goes a long way. And more than likely, your landlord is going to know, that anyway, if you're telling the truth or not. If you're somebody that's facing difficulties not being able to pay your rent, there are some rental assistance programs that are out there. You want to go on your Google search and type in rental assistance programs. I always suggest that people look under the websites that have the .org or .gov at the end of it. Those are usually the more reputable companies, especially if it says .gov. So you want to check those out. But there are some rental assistance programs that are out there that could possibly help you with coming up with your rent if you're past due on your rent. If you're not able to get any assistance to help you to pay the past due rent, or your landlord, unfortunately, is not able to assist you and is demanding possession of the property, which is the same as filing the eviction, then unfortunately, you're going to have to find another place to reside, because you don't want to have the embarrassment of your things being set out on the lawn for all the neighbors to see. And then you're trying to figure out, where do I go from here? All right. I hope I have helped someone with some information on this process. I would like for you to do me a favor also. This is my Tenant Tuesday. These are my Tenant Tuesday financial series. I hadn't done them in a while and decided today to go ahead and go back live and do some of these. So if you're wondering what this is my financial series, my Tenant Tuesday. This is the Juice Radio and Talk Show. This is my regular brand, my radio and talk show channel, the Juice Radio and Talk Show. I would like for you to subscribe to my YouTube page. If you're looking at this from one of my other platforms, go on over there to YouTube, type in the Juice Radio and Talk Show so that you'll be able to get more updates and information. I'm going to be bringing a lot more of this on here, a lot more information on here. I think next week I'm going to be doing a series or a video on from start to ending, when people rent a home and that move-in condition list, and then when they move out, that move-in condition list, and why certain people lose their deposits when they move out. I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to try and get that up for next week. All right. So my name is Regina, and I'm here with the Juice Radio and Talk Show. I hope you've enjoyed this program today. And if you have any questions, you can always inbox me, or you can email me. You can email me at my page here at the Juice Radio and Talk Show, the Juice Radio and Talk Show at gmail.com. Go ahead and email me there, or you can come on my, go to my website at thejuiceradio.net. All right. We have a website, thejuiceradio.net, and we also have all these other social media platforms as well. And if you're listening on my podcast, the Juice Radio and Talk Show podcast channel, thank you for listening. Please share the information, share the channel so that we can get more subscribers. We're out here trying to help folks, we're out here trying to help people, all right? I want to thank my sponsors. I got a couple of sponsors here. We got our sponsor, Truth and Triumph Ministries. Thank you for all the work that you do helping me with this platform. I also want to thank Custom Apparel Shop. If you need embroidery, all you need to do is to contact Israel Mason at Custom Apparel Shop. His number is 786-667-7501. Let him know that Regina at the Juice Radio and Talk Show sent you over there to him. And if you're not in Miami, Florida, don't worry about it. He can also ship items to you. He can send you items as well. Just give him a call. It doesn't matter which state you're in. Custom Apparel Shop with Israel Mason can take care of you. And you don't have to worry about having one item or thousands of items. He does not count. He just goes ahead and give you good service. So whether you have small items, small number of items you want to have, or large quantities, he is going to help you with that. So go ahead and contact him as well. Again, I'm Regina at the Juice Radio and Talk Show. We're going to be back for some more information here on our financial series. And I'm really hoping that tenants and landlords are able to work out things so that there are no more evictions. We really don't want any more evictions. All right. Well, thank you for watching today. I'm going to get back in here because I still got paperwork to do. All right. But thank y'all for watching. Y'all have a wonderful day. I'm going to say bye for now. Bye.